Hi everybody, my name is Dustin Hibbler. I am the Associate Director of Enrollment and Recruitment at Southwest Chicago Christian Schools. Welcome to the next episode of the KnightTime podcast. I am joined today by a man who needs no introduction, but I'm going to have him introduce himself.
Nick Cook, so I teach PE here and coach the football team and serve as the strength and conditioning coach.
Thank you for joining us.
Yep, thanks for having me.
So obviously 2020 has been pretty wonky.
It's a good word for it.
We've used a lot of words to describe it. I don't know if wonky has come up yet, so I'm going to use that one today.
I like it.
So what did things look like from not only a strength and conditioning perspective, but also from a football perspective, starting back at the beginning of the spring/summer?
Completely different. Yeah, I mean, it's, there are a lot of things different. But one of our goals was, to keep things as consistent from the kids' perspective as possible. So as far as trying to provide for them, some experiences that if we could find some similar like rhythms, that was a big goal. So even back in the spring when we shifted completely, to at-home workouts, we still tried to structure the format, days of the week, the emphasis on each day, try to keep those things consistent, and just provide like a different format for them, to accomplish some of it at home. So, so I'd say our kids, in terms of whether it was the classes with strength training classes, PE classes, or even for after-school workouts, which would be beyond just even my football players. I feel like that piece kind of helped kids at least have some stability to knowing what's coming and things like that. But we had to put out a lot more video content as far as, demonstrating and explaining, how to do some of the things. So an example that comes to mind was we do a speed school 2 days a week after school here normally. And so we wanted to maintain that, but as far as kids' access to equipment and things like that, but that was one where we put out some video content, kind of demonstrating. So actually I used my sons at home, as kind of my
Nice.
guinea pigs or, my guys, my model athletes to film, just to give some visual to what we'd be talking about, which obviously normally we can do in person here. So, but yeah, just, adapting with all the differences, but trying to accomplish some consistency on behalf of the kids was the big goal.
Sure, and obviously as we moved toward the beginning of the school year, obviously things kept changing, and I know obviously the latest change has, at least so far, been cemented that we had things moved, some things canceled, some things adjusted. So what's happening right now in terms of, typically this would be the heart of football season?
Right. Yeah, typically you'd be talking to me right now, you'd have a lot less energy probably, right? Be a lot more fatigued, but yeah, so it's, the fall sports are postponed until the spring. And so what the IHSA has allowed, though, that's going on right now is what they're referring to as, like they do in the summer, as contact days. So essentially we have contact days in the summer, a certain amount per sport. And so essentially what has happened is that they've granted additional contact days that we can accomplish within the fall. And so it's about 8 weeks is what they allowed. So some football programs, as an example, maybe at bigger schools, can utilize that whole 8 weeks. And so for us, though, we have so many multi-sport athletes that the way we're doing that is, as far as the boys' sports, football is getting, the first few weeks, and then baseball will get a few weeks, and then boys' basketball will kind of get the final piece of that 8 weeks leading into their season. And so, and I love it. I mean, it's, to me, the whole spirit of what we try to do here athletically has to do with the multi-sport athlete, even what we do with strength and conditioning. And so I just love the plan that Mr. Zylstra came up with for that, to allow, basically kids don't have to choose between things, can get an opportunity to have a schedule and, kind of line them up and knock them down, so to speak. So that's how we're doing that. We actually set our first, football practice last night.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so we're actually just engaging right now with football with those 3 weeks that we get.
Cool. So as we move forward into the school year, obviously, ideally, COVID goes away sooner rather than later. But with planning and preparation, when does the season actually start that's been pushed to the spring? What does that look like?
So like the practice period would be mid-February for what are the fall sports. And so that would be the practice period, and the games would start towards the beginning of March. So we have a lot of baseball guys as an example, and we've just basically said what you've experienced with baseball, right? Where you start in February, and then the beginning of March, even with the weather, right? Like, see what it's like in the Midwest, come March 1st. You're used to dealing with that if you've played those spring sports, if you've done track. It's just that we're going to be dealing with that with football. And then naturally, the spring sports going into the summer, they'll be dealing with, hotter temperatures at the end compared to what maybe they're used to. So, but I've just been and I've been saying this all along, like I've been so impressed with our kids. And, across the board, even just seeing things on social media, I really feel like I'm just impressed with like this generation of kids and this being such a huge challenge. And I feel like I personally, with our kids, have just seen like this like steadfast like resilience. Everything we've adapted, everything that we've scheduled for them, it's like we got better attendance for some of that stuff than we've ever had. And my mind was that could have gone the other direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And understandably so. I don't think we would have lacked compassion if, kids were less interested or something. But it's been like the opposite, from my view, is, kids' resiliency, their, motivation, to not just show up, but be willing to really work hard and still try to become a better teammate, even with the unknown.
Right.
And so I've just been impressed by that. That, to me, that encourages me as far as this generation, because I've been really impressed with it.
So from an off-season perspective, obviously in a normal season, you've got the season concludes October, November, and then you've got a decent amount of time. So going in this weird calendar setup where you start kind of things in the spring, you've got all the summer to get ready, but now you've added this off-season, and then you're going to have a short off-season ideally next year.
Right, it's all going to blend together. Yeah.
How does that impact the way that you go about preparing for seasons and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've explained it to our guys football-wise is what you would consider your off-season essentially got extended.
Okay.
And so we've totally have taken the, glasses half full mindset to say, okay, hey, we put a big emphasis on goal setting and, not just doing that physically, but spiritually, mentally, all those aspects of their health. And we go as far with the details with our football off season that, we map it out. That really essentially our football off season normally is 26 weeks worth of training, working towards goals, accomplishing those things. So the way that we framed it to our guys is, okay, now it's 26 plus.
Right.
And we actually did the math. It's pretty close in terms of the February side of it. It's pretty close as far as functional weeks, because you got Thanksgiving will be in there, Christmas break. But functional weeks of work and more opportunity to get better, it's essentially adding like another 20 weeks.
Wow.
To that. And so that's the way that we've kind of chose to look at it and promote to our guys is, okay, we're going to take all those goals that you had set a deadline for of August, revisit those and say, my goodness, what could I accomplish with 20 more weeks to do with that? And like I said, kids is across the board. It has just been receptive. Guys just kind of picking things up and rolling back with it, so.
Yeah, because what a unique opportunity to use more time to become that much better. That's one thing that when I was in high school, I was always so impressed by people that, whether you have a growth spurt or, the guy's packing on the pounds for whatever sport it might be, but the more time that people have to prepare for something can go both ways, right? You can have people who are a little bit more on the lacking end or people who have some serious gains that they make. And so, yeah, it's great that they're taking that perspective. That's awesome. Well, I think that wraps up what we were going to talk about today. So just to sum up for our audience, so we talked about what the spring/summer looked like. You said that you had brought the kids here. Then we talked about what we're currently doing, which was very exciting to learn right before we started doing this podcast that you guys had practice last night and you watched the NFL kickoff, which was really cool. And then, of course, the fact that the season has been shifted to February to start games in March. So I'm really excited for that. This is my first year here. I'm really excited to watch some Knights football here. And it'll be in the winter, which is a little odd, but hey,
End of winter. So
this whole COVID 2020, 2021 situation has all been interesting. So we're just adding some more interesting elements to the school year. So I want to say thank you for joining us for the September podcast. We appreciate you coming on and talking about football with us. And we will give a little sneak preview here. We've got Reverend Jason Perry is coming on for the next podcast. So keep an eye on social media for that. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Leave us a comment if you want to see any specific podcasts covered, and look at the ones that we've already covered as well. But as for now, that's everything. So signing off, thanks for joining us.
Go Knights.